I knew something was off the moment I saw the cake. It didn't say congrats, Sarah, like the mock-up HR showed me on Thursday. It said, welcome, VP Leela, in this glittery-ass frosting that looked like it had been piped by a unicorn on Adderall. My name wasn't anywhere. Not on the balloons, not in the group Slack invite, not in the cheesy slideshow looping on the flat screen with royalty-free trumpet music. Just Leela. Leela with the fresh blowout, 90-day-old company badge, and the resume full of vibes. 12 years. 12 years I put into this company. Bled for it. Held it together through the 2018 vendor migration debacle, the 2020 lockdown logistics crisis, and Greg's annual tequila-fueled meltdown at the shareholder retreat. And now I was standing there with a paper plate of grocery store cake, watching Greg beam like he just solved world hunger by hiring a TikTok star with a business minor. I felt my stomach turn. Not because of the betrayal, though don't get me wrong, that sucker punched me straight in the throat, but because I still had that damn thank you speech in my purse. Folded, highlighted, practiced in the mirror like some fool still believing in merit. Greg cleared his throat and tapped his glass like he was proposing at Chili's. Let's raise a glass to new beginnings, he said, that smug grin twitching at the corner of his mouth. Leela, we're thrilled to have you stepping into this role. You've brought such energy to the team. Energy meaning 200,000 followers and an authentic personal brand that once reviewed shampoo on Good Morning Cincinnati. I felt every eye shift toward me. Even the interns looked like they'd swallowed a thumbtack. But I didn't flinch. I smiled, kind of smile you practice when your ex shows up to your dad's funeral with his new girlfriend wearing your old engagement ring. I clinked my glass against Leela's and said to leadership and downed the whole thing. And hey, if you're still reading this and already feel your blood pressure rising like mine did that day, do me one solid favor. Tap that subscribe button. This channel's trying to hit 10,000 subscribers, my first milestone ever. It's free, and trust me, revenge arc is worth it. Anyway, the party carried on, kind of. I floated through it like a damn hologram, accepting hollow hugs and muttered apologies from people who'd hyped me up all month. Greg pretended not to notice the shift in energy, and Leela, she was too busy uploading an Instagram reel with the caption, Manifestation Works. #boss life #level up. She actually winked at me as she hit publish. Like we were in on the same joke. Like I should be proud she'd leapfrogged me into a title I spent over a decade grinding for. By the time the fake cheer had fizzled and the champagne flutes were empty, I'd already made a decision. No tears, no scenes, no dramatic exits. But oh, they were going to feel it. Every last one. I went home with the speech still folded in my purse. Didn't even take a cupcake. Just sat in the back of my Uber, staring out the window, letting the ache settle into something colder, sharper. And by midnight, I'd opened my laptop. I didn't rage type, I sorted, I archived, I printed. I created a folder labeled Monday, because Greg might have handed my title to a hashtag, but I was about to hand him something with a lot more bite. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I didn't even pour myself a drink, which, if you know me, is saying a lot. I just sat at my kitchen table, still in my party blazer, heels kicked off, hair pinned up like I was still holding it together. The house was dead quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the distant bark of the neighbor's deranged chihuahua. The first thing I did was delete Leela's Instagram. Or at least, I tried. I pulled it up like a masochist. And there it was, a filtered shot of her holding that champagne flute mid-toast, with that big dopey grin and a caption that read, hard work pays off. EP Life begins briefcase sparkles, so grateful 2 hearts #promoted #women in biz #Whitestone Rising. I could have bitten through glass. Instead, I clicked save on the post. Not out of spite, evidence. That caption would come in handy, like the online equivalent of a fingerprint on the murder weapon. Then I opened my company laptop. First folder I went to, Vendor Contracts Legacy Archive. I'd managed those relationships for years. Backend of Whitestone ran on people nobody else even knew by name. That courier in Kansas who saved our entire regional ops when the trucking union threatened to walk. I sent him a holiday card and negotiated his retainer. I didn't just know the pipes, I was the plumber. I pulled every master agreement I'd touched, downloaded clean PDFs, saved them to a fresh, encrypted drive. My initials were all over these files. My sign-offs, my hand-built schedules and rider clauses. Some of them, especially with our international fulfillment partner, had rider appendices only I had the password to decrypt. Then came the expense reports. Greg's, to be exact. I'd had a folder going since 2021 called We'll See, not because I expected to use it, just insurance. He'd always been sloppy, charging $1,100 steak dinners to vendor onboarding when I knew damn well he'd been in Cabo. Duplicated Uber charges. Spa services logged as client entertainment. There were foot rubs labeled ergonomic wellness consulting. I'm not even joking. I copied them all. By Saturday afternoon, I was in full command center mode. I'd already reviewed the non-disclosure matrix, confirmed my NDAs didn't prevent me from working in the same sector post-resignation. Whitestone never gave me equity or a golden parachute, but what they did give me was access and a mountain of leverage. Leela had no idea how deep this ran. She probably thought running ops meant delegating and reposting inspirational quotes. The girl once asked me during a staff meeting if we still use fax machines. The entire compliance chain wasn't still half paper. She didn't know where the skeletons were because she didn't even know where the damn closets were. By Sunday morning, I'd drafted 3 versions of my resignation letter, each more surgical than the last. I wrote one that was professional and short, one that included bullet points on strategic failures I'd patched without acknowledgement, and one where I called Greg a cocktail napkin in a tailored suit. I deleted that one. Midway through organizing my files, I came across an old email thread with Jacob Mendoza. A decade ago, he was a mid-level project lead at a logistics startup we partnered with. These days, he ran Mendoza and Hartwell Capital, and if LinkedIn was to be believed, he was currently looking to invest in a B2B logistics platform with senior ops talent. I flagged it, then I booked a flight. Monday, 6:15 a.m. I didn't rage, didn't spiral, I made a plan. Every folder labeled, every thread backed up. By Sunday night, the only thing left to do was hit send. Let Greg have his VP Barbie and her glitter captions. I was taking the plumbing. The email went out at exactly 8:55 a.m., time to hit just before the weekly ops check-in, right as the caffeine was kicking in and before anyone could raise the red flag. It was short, surgical. No rant, no drama, no passive-aggressive barbs. Just 3 paragraphs of closure that read like a resignation and felt like a confession from someone who already knew the fallout was coming. Subject: formal resignation to Greg, HR, legal effective immediately. I will be resigning from my position at Whitestone Ventures. I appreciate the opportunities I've had to contribute to the company over the last 12 years, and I'm grateful for the professional relationships built along the way. Be unavailable for transition or follow-up, and I trust the leadership team is well-positioned to move forward. All relevant documentation has been archived and remains accessible via my department's shared drive. Sarah D. Whitaker. Simple, clean, a scalpel, not a sword. And by the time Greg's forehead vein popped reading it, I was already somewhere above Kentucky, midair with the window blind cracked just enough to let in a sliver of gray morning light. No laptop, no work phone, just me, a neck pillow, and a business-class Bloody Mary because hell yes, I booked it on miles. The flight attendant asked what I was headed out for. I told her a meeting, which wasn't a lie. Jacob Mendoza's assistant had confirmed the lunch reservation the night before. Private dining room, old steakhouse downtown. The same Mendoza who once nearly tanked a $4 million rollout until I stepped in, without being asked, mind you, rebuilt the project plan from the ground up. He'd never forgotten that. In fact, he'd sent me a bottle of scotch afterward with a note that just said, "You saved our ass." He owed me at least a conversation, and if things went the way I hoped, he'd do more than talk. Back in the Whitestone office, chaos was starting to bubble. I imagine it unfolded like a slow-burn horror film. Greg sipping his green smoothie, swaggering into his corner office. Ila already vlogging her first real day in a structured blazer and ring light glow. Then, ping. Greg reads the subject line, reads it again. Sarah resigned, he probably asked, loud enough for nearby cubicles to hear. Cue the panic shuffle, HR digging into the shared drives. Legal forwarding the email to each other with cautious emojis. Leela, blissfully unaware, still posting a reel of her riding big meeting day on a whiteboard in pink expo marker. Greg tried calling, twice, then once more on WhatsApp like I was going to pick up just because the ringtone was different. I watched the calls roll in from the screen of my personal phone, face down on the tray table, while I tore into airline eggs with all the joy of a woman who no longer had to pretend Greg's quarterly vision decks weren't copied straight off McKinsey blogs. The best part? I knew they didn't know what I'd taken. Not files, not trade secrets. Just me, my knowledge, my scaffolding, the people who trusted me, the systems only I could untangle because I was the one who duct-taped them together in the first place. Leela could sit in the chair, but she didn't even know where the light switches were. The plane hit a little turbulence, and I sipped my drink without flinching. I wasn't worried. Monday was just getting started. By 10:13 a.m., Whitestone Ventures was wheezing like a busted Roomba stuck under a couch. Leela had walked in that morning wearing a power suit 2 sizes too ambitious and a smile like she'd just won a Teen Choice Award. She sat in my old chair, though God knows she probably thought it was new, and fired off a Slack message to Team Ops, asking everyone to drop their wins from last week Flex Sparkles. Bless her. The first thing to break was the logistics calendar. She tried to move a standing vendor sync to Thursday to better align with her Pillate slot. The whole nested task chain collapsed like a drunk Jenga tower. 48 field appointments vanished from view. 2 resupply shipments got tagged with conflicting barcodes and ended up halfway to Saskatchewan. At 11:02 a.m., a call came in from Marius, one of our legacy warehouse vendors in Michigan. Marius didn't tolerate nonsense. He once chewed out an intern for putting lol in an email. He asked for clarification on new load times. Leela said, "I'll circle back once I've circled in, whatever the hell that meant." He hung up mid-sentence and CC'd Greg with the subject line, "Amateurs running ops." The back-end system, custom-built years ago by a half-dead dev shop we could never afford to replace, began locking up every time Leela tried to access routing tables. See, the thing was, I never broke protocol. I didn't hoard passwords or hide files. But the system was finicky, held together by code, duct tape, and my sheer stubbornness. You had to know it, and no one else had ever bothered to learn. Greg tried to demand access. IT pulled up the logs, no flags, no hoarding. Everything was technically compliant. But when they tried to hand over admin privileges, the tech guy actually said, "We'll need time." Sarah was the only one who ever understood how this thing breathed. By noon, the Monday operations call was in free fall. Leela opened with a chirpy hey team. By minute 7, she was sweating through her silk blouse. She couldn't explain the West Coast scheduling bug, couldn't interpret the quarterly metrics dashboard. She called the vendor trust matrix a vibe alignment chart. At one point, she actually said, "Let's just flow with it." People started dropping off the call like lemmings. Grace from procurement sent me a text that just read, "WTF is happening." I didn't reply. I was sitting across from Jacob Mendoza, eating steak tips and sipping a Cabernet that cost more than Leela's outfit, watching Greg's missed calls pile up like sad digital dominoes on my lock screen. By 2 p.m., someone finally noticed that our customs preclearance forms for 2 shipments due in Baltimore were missing timestamps. That was my system, my checklist, and now, gone. Greg stormed into IT demanding a systems audit, told him everything had been backed up. Problem was, those backups were designed by me, labeled in my shorthand, stored in folders with names like Burn after reading and Greg's panic room. They were there, but not for them. Leela, meanwhile, tried to pull together a pep email. "Just a reminder," she wrote, "the best leaders rise during storms. Keep shining, fam light flex sparkling hash, we got this." By then, someone had started a private Slack thread titled VPOcalypse. I didn't create it, but I was invited, and I smiled, not because I wanted Whitestone to burn, but because they'd built the whole thing on my spine and thought they could rip it out without the body going limp. Greg had the title. Leela had the seat, but I had the map. I turned off my phone after that, let them marinate. Some lessons need to be learned without interruption. Tuesday morning started quiet, too quiet for company whose usual routine involved a dozen half-panicked emails by 9:15 and at least one Greg temper tantrum before the second coffee run. But then 9:32 hit. That's when Greg realized there were no emails from Inland Core. No PO confirmations, no Slack messages. Nothing. Inland Core was one of our longest-standing partners. Industrial distribution, high volume, high demand, high maintenance. Once sent Whitestone a fruit basket during a backlog we cleared in under 24 hours. And now, dead silence. Then came Stratasync, our biggest SAW logistics client, big money, global reach. Their Tuesday sync was as regular as clockwork, canceled, with no explanation. Greg started sweating in a way only men in tailored dress shirts do, where it stains from the spine outward like a crime scene. He called Joan from Enterprise Accounts. He hadn't heard from them either. She checked her inbox. Still waiting on confirmation, she said, voice tight. This isn't normal. By 10:07, he'd initiated the internal thread titled Alert, Key Clients Unresponsive. It pinged every director-level staff member with the kind of urgency normally reserved for lawsuits or when the Wi-Fi goes down during quarterly earnings. And then, just after 11, someone from sales dropped a bomb in the thread. Jacob Mendoza just posted a lunch pic with Sarah Whitaker and 2 Inland Core execs. Tag, #fresh starts #strategic growth. Greg's pulse probably skipped 3 beats. He clicked the link. There I was, centered in the frame, hair down, blazer sharp, holding a glass of white wine and looking like I'd never heard of Whitestone in my life. No Whitestone logos, no confidential intel, just lunch. A new beginning. She take anything? Someone typed into the email thread. Are we protected under non-compete? Another added. Should we involve legal? Legal chimed in 15 minutes later. Their message was a punch to the gut, wrapped in velvet. At this time, there's no indication Miss Whitaker has violated any contractual obligations. She exited cleanly, gave appropriate notice, and maintained compliance with IP and non-solicitation protocols. Recommend caution before pursuing formal action. Translation, she played you, by the book. Leela tried to downplay it in the leadership group chat, something about how competitors will always try to poach, but our culture is what keeps people loyal. No one responded for a solid hour. Meanwhile, Inland Core's rep declined our meeting reschedule with a cold, 2-word reply, no need. Stratasync emailed Greg directly with a vague note. We've been evaluating other partnerships for strategic alignment. Appreciate the relationship to date. Strategic alignment, that's corporate for, we're out, and you won't get the chance to fix it. Greg spent the afternoon pacing like a zoo animal. He told Leela to be visible and sent her to do a walk-around on the office floor like she was some kind of panicked mascot. He asked IT to check server logs. Showed nothing. No suspicious downloads, no file transfers. I'd archived what needed archiving and nothing more. Not a single pixel out of place. Because I didn't need their files. I was the file. Every late-night call, every workaround, every nuance in vendor behavior or client redline, I remembered it. The human infrastructure they never valued until the lights flickered. And now, they were stumbling through the dark, wondering how the house collapsed with no warning. But it wasn't sudden. It was planned. Silently, precisely. Like a light switch flipped by the only person who knew where it was. It started with a folder labeled Q2 Reports Archive Final that mysteriously began circulating through the company Slack late Wednesday afternoon. No one knew who uploaded it. No one asked. But everyone clicked. Inside, a buffet of Greg's greatest hits. Line item. Client dinner Soho Prime $1,240.76. Attached receipt. 2 Wagyu steaks, 3 bottles of Barolo, and a $300 cigar flight from a cigar lounge in Monaco. Problem? We don't have any clients in Monaco. Another, transportation to strategic offsite. The Uber receipt showed a pickup at a bar in Tribeca and drop-off at a hotel in Brooklyn, timestamped 2:14 a.m. Passenger name was redacted, but the driver comment read, pickup was drunk and didn't tip. Then came the kicker, an entire week labeled Client Development, Confidential, that coincided with Greg's now infamous tequila bender in Chelum. There were beachfront massages, poolside cocktail service, even a jet ski rental, all logged as wellness networking. By 3:17 p.m., HR had opened a formal investigation. Anonymous email had landed in their inbox with the subject line, Suggestion, Audit Greg's Reimbursements. The body simply read, Start with Q2. Compare it to the corporate card feed. Good luck. Someone screenshotted the notification and posted it in the private Slack thread VPOcalypse. That thread had over 40 members now. And while Greg was upstairs pretending to be busy, Leela was downstairs blowing up a client call, taken point on a pitch to Copperway Solutions, an old, proud client that Sarah Whitaker had personally onboarded back in the 4 spreadsheets and a handshake days. The ask was simple, renew at legacy pricing with a slight increase. Easy money. But Leela, in all her ring light glory, opened the call by quoting the new pricing tier without the grandfathered discount. She didn't notice the tone shift. She didn't clock the silence. She just kept going, chipper as a Girl Scout on commission. The Copperway rep stopped her mid-slide and said, That's a 38% increase over our agreement. Sarah assured us that wouldn't happen. Leela blinked. Who's Sarah? The call ended 2 minutes later. By 4:06, Copperway emailed a formal request to review their exit options. Back upstairs, Greg was in his office with the door shut and blinds down, a rare move that everyone knew meant one thing: damage control. He was on the phone with legal, with HR, with someone at accounting, trying to plug a dam that was cracking by the second. But his voice, normally a confident drone, sounded strained, panicked. He came out only once to bark at Leela in front of everyone. Why didn't you verify the legacy pricing? She turned red, then pale, then red again. No one gave me a list. You didn't ask. He snapped and then stormed off. Room fell into that weird kind of silence that sticks to the walls even after the sound leaves. People weren't just gossiping anymore. They were watching, studying, smelling the rot under the drywall. I imagine Greg sat at his desk that night and opened that Slack folder. Saw his own name on receipts he barely remembered. Realized that someone somewhere had been keeping score. That the quiet woman he publicly skipped over for a VP promotion might have walked out the front door, but didn't leave empty-handed. And for the first time in years, I bet he realized what it felt like to be exposed. No titles to hide behind, no glittery LinkedIn posts, just cracks. Cracks in the foundation, spidering faster with every passing hour. And I was only getting started. The meeting with Jacob Mendoza was supposed to be a formality, just a lunch. Catch up, maybe a few ideas scribbled on a napkin. But by the time we'd ordered our second round of espresso martinis, he slid a leather folio across the table and said, "We don't want to hire you. We want to unleash you." Inside, a job offer with no job title. Your role, he said, grinning, is whatever breaks the most ground. Strategist, closer. Assassin, you'll hunt targets, design sabotage, build better systems in the ashes. No org chart, no red tape, no Gregs. The base salary was already more than I'd made at Whitestone after 12 years of loyalty raises. The bonus structure. Let's just say the ink hadn't even dried on my NDA, and I already had enough to cover a lake house and the therapy bills it would require. First assignment, Whitestone's upcoming expansion into the Pacific Northwest. A key market. Mendoza and Hartwell had their eyes on the same region. Where Whitestone planned to muscle in with legacy pricing and deadweight processes, Jacob wanted to go lean, fast, and sharp. They're already laying down rail, he said. But no one's watching the switches. That's where you come in. I didn't blink. I made a list on the flight back. Not just of clients, of people. People still at Whitestone who were brilliant, overlooked, or just quietly miserable. The ones who stayed late, fixed the bugs, held the walls up while Greg presented their ideas with his name on the slide deck. Nina in logistics, Jamal from pricing, the intern who coded an auto-inventory tool I once saved from being deleted. I remembered them all, and they remembered me. The first call was tentative, Nina. She answered on the third ring and said, "Please tell me you're building something." "I'm building something better," I said. She joined a week later. Then came Jamal. Then a ripple effect. People who had been waiting, not for permission, but for proof that leaving wouldn't mean starting over. That there was life after Greg, after Whitestone. I wasn't a martyr anymore. I was a magnet. Whitestone had spent years teaching me how not to lead. Now I was using every lesson against them. Better vendor tools, real-time analytics. No bloated chains of approval or death by PowerPoint status updates. Just speed, clarity, and execution. Even bought Leela's personal domain name. She hadn't secured it. Redirected it to a landing page that said, "Our office." Indefinitely, petty? Maybe, but satisfying like ice water down a sunburn. The confidence didn't come back all at once. It arrived in increments. The way I stood in a meeting. The way men twice my age shut up when I pulled up a spreadsheet. The way Jacob looked at me not like a gamble, but like a guarantee. I was different now. Not angry, not wounded, just sharpened. Greg had bet on image. I bet on infrastructure. He wanted fireworks. I was building a pipeline. And now, for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't a name on someone else's org chart. I was the threat in their strategy memo. The unforeseen competitor. The ghost in the market they thought they owned. And I hadn't even launched yet. The boardroom was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the clink of a trembling water glass as Greg tried to swallow his pride along with his panic. 12 chairs. 11 furious faces. And one empty one, supposedly reserved for the new VP of operations. But Leela hadn't shown up yet, probably because she was too busy damage controlling the PR nightmare that erupted the night before when her hash boss babe TikTok went viral for all the wrong reasons. The video, her bragging about leveling up fast in a male-dominated industry while mispronouncing logistics, had become meme fuel. Comments were brutal. Even the interns were sharing it with crying laugh emojis. Across the conference table, Whitestone's largest investor leaned back in his chair and asked, with ice in his voice, "Greg, how the hell did this happen?" Greg tried to smile. It looked more like a twitch. "We faced unexpected attrition and, client recalibrations," he stammered. "Market disruption has played a role, but we're stabilizing." Someone cleared their throat. Another board member tapped a laptop and connected to the projector. The slide appeared on the wall, a clean, simple performance chart. The line climbed slowly, steadily, with a few plateaus. Then, 2 weeks ago, a sharp drop. Flatline, numbers frozen. The date was circled. It was the day I resigned. No one said a word. Then came the next slide, Mendoza and Hartwell's press release. COO appointment, Sarah Whitaker. Greg audibly swallowed. "I thought you said she wasn't a flight risk," one director muttered. "She wasn't," Greg insisted, hands rising. She was loyal. For 12 years. She was a lifer." The room flinched at the word. "Loyalty isn't permanent." Another board member snapped. "It's earned, maintained. You had her running your company for over a decade while you played dress-up CEO and padded your expense reports with mojitos and cigars." Someone else chimed in. 2 legacy clients gone. 3 key staffers walked. 1 internal investigation into financial misconduct. And the Pacific Northwest expansion. Dead in the water. You know why. Everyone turned as the next slide loaded. A Mendoza and Hartwell marketing teaser. Coming soon, infrastructure reimagined. The logo shimmered against a deep navy background. Greg finally lost whatever was left of his grip. "This is a coordinated hit. She's sabotaging us. She had to take files, contacts. She's poisoning the well." Legal, seated quietly at the end of the table, lifted their head. No violations on record. Every interaction was above board. He didn't take anything, a beat. She just left. Leela arrived 20 minutes late, sunglasses on, hickeys from public opinion all over her reputation. She sat down silently as someone slid a folder toward her. "Your quarterly review," said the director. She didn't open it. Greg wiped his forehead and looked down the table like a drowning man searching for a rope. But the only thing coming was a motion to review executive leadership. The meeting ended with 0 claps, no handshakes, no jokes. Just chairs scraping and the quiet realization that Whitestone's future had walked out 2 weeks ago with a smile and a carry-on. And now, she was thriving. That afternoon, I did a press interview, part of our launch campaign for the new division. Clean backdrop, clean lines, confidence without apology. The final question was expected, but delicious. "Anything you'd like to say to your former employer?" I smiled just enough for it to sting. "Maybe next time," I said, "they'll know who not to underestimate." Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.